On the second floor, there was a little light from a skylight far above. The apartment doors lined up, 4 on the floor, uncommunicative and silent. There was a bottle of milk outside 2C. On the 3rd floor, she waited for a minute. There was the sound of music beyond the door of 3B, and she could hear voices. Finally, she knocked and knocked again. The door was opened, and the music swept out at her, an early afternoon symphony broadcast. "How do you do?" she said politely to this woman in the doorway. "Mrs. Royster." "That's right." The woman was wearing a housecoat and last night's makeup. "I wonder if I might talk to you for a minute." "Sure," Mrs. Royster said, not moving. "About Mr. Harris." "What Mr. Harris?" Mrs. Royster said flatly. "Mr. James Harris, the gentleman who borrowed your apartment." "Oh, Lord," Mrs. Royster said. She seemed to open her eyes for the first time. "What'd he do?" "Nothing. I'm just trying to get in touch with him." "Oh, Lord," Mrs. Royster said again. Then she opened the door wider and said, "Come in," and then, "Ralph." Inside, the apartment was still full of music, and there were suitcases half unpacked on the couch, on the chairs, on the floor. A table in the corner was spread with the remains of a meal, and the young man sitting there, for a minute resembling Jamie, got up and came across the room. "What about it?" he said. "Mr. Royster," she said. It was difficult to talk against the music. "The downstairs told me that this was where Mr. James Harris has been living." "Sure," he said, "if that was his name." "I thought you lent him the apartment," she said, surprised. "I don't know anything about him," Mr. Royster said. "He's one of Dottie's friends." "Not my friends," Mrs. Royster said. "No friend of mine." She had gone over to the table and was spreading peanut butter on a piece of bread. She took a bite and said thickly, waving the bread and peanut butter at her husband, "Not my friend." "You picked him up at one of those damn meetings," Mr. Royster said. He shoved a suitcase off the chair next to the radio and sat down, picking up a magazine from the floor next to him. "I never said more'n 10 words to him." "You said it was okay to lend him the place," Mrs. Royster said before she took another bite. "You never said a word against him after all." "I don't say anything about your friends," Mr. Royster said. "If he'd have been a friend of mine, you would have said plenty, believe me," Mrs. Royster said darkly. She took another bite and said, "Believe me, he would have said plenty." "That's all I want to hear," Mr. Royster said over the top of the magazine. "No more now." "You see," Mrs. Royster pointed the bread and peanut butter at her husband. "That's the way it is, day and night." There was silence except for the music bellowing out of the radio next to Mr. Royster. And then she said, in a voice she hardly trusted to be heard over the radio noise, "Has he gone then?" "Who?" Mrs. Royster demanded, looking up from the peanut butter jar. "Mr. James Harris." "Him? He must have left this morning before we got back. No sign of him anywhere." "Gone? Everything was fine, though, perfectly fine. I told you," she said to Mr. Royster. "I told you he'd take care of everything fine. I can always tell." "You were lucky," Mr. Royster said. "Not a thing out of place," Mrs. Royster said. She waved her bread and peanut butter inclusively. "Everything just the way we left it," she said. "Do you know where he is now?" "Not the slightest idea," Mrs. Royster said cheerfully. "But, like I said, he left everything fine. Why?" she asked suddenly. "You looking for him?" "It's very important." "I'm sorry he's not here," Mrs. Royster said. She stepped forward politely when she saw her visitor turn toward the door. "Maybe the super saw him." Mr. Royster said into the magazine. When the door was closed behind her, the hall was dark again, but the sound of the radio was deadened. She was halfway down the first flight of stairs when the door was opened and Mrs. Royster shouted down the stairwell, "If I see him, I'll tell him you were looking for him." What can I do, she thought, out on the street again. It was impossible to go home, not with Jamie somewhere between here and there. She stood on the sidewalk so long that a woman leaning out of a window across the way turned and called to someone inside to come and see. Finally, on an impulse, she went into the small delicatessen next door to the apartment house, on the side that led to her own apartment. There was a small man reading a newspaper, leaning against the counter. When she came in, he looked up and came down inside the counter to meet her. Over the glass case of cold meats and cheese, she said timidly, "I'm trying to get in touch with a man who lived in the apartment house next door, and I just wondered if you know him." "Why didn't you ask the people there?" the man said, his eyes narrow, inspecting her. "It's because I'm not buying anything," she thought, and she said, "I'm sorry. I asked them, but they don't know anything about him. They think he left this morning." "I don't know what you want me to do," he said, moving a little back toward his newspaper. "I'm not here to keep track of guys going in and out next door." She said quickly, "I thought you might have noticed, that's all. He would have been coming past here a little before 10 o'clock. He was rather tall, and he usually wore a blue suit." "Now, how many men in blue suits go past here every day, lady?" the man demanded. "You think I got nothing to do but—" "I'm sorry," she said. She heard him say, "For God's sake," as she went out the door. As she walked toward the corner, she thought, "He must have come this way. It's the way he'd go to get to my house. It's the only way for him to walk." She tried to think of Jamie. Where would he have crossed the street? What sort of person was he actually? Would he cross in front of his own apartment house, at random in the middle of the block, at the corner? On the corner was a newsstand. They might have seen him there. She hurried on and waited while a man bought a paper and a woman asked directions. When the newsstand man looked at her, she said, "Can you possibly tell me if a rather tall young man in a blue suit went past here this morning around 10 o'clock? When the man only looked at her, his eyes wide and his mouth a little open, she thought, "He thinks it's a joke or a trick." And she said urgently, "It's very important. Please believe me. I'm not teasing you." "Look, lady," the man began, and she said eagerly, "He's a writer. He might have bought magazines here." "What you want him for?" the man asked. He looked at her, smiling, and she realized that there was another man waiting in back of her, and the newsdealer's smile included him. "Never mind," she said, but the newsdealer said, "Listen, maybe he did come by here." His smile was knowing, and his eyes shifted over her shoulder to the man in back of her. She was suddenly horribly aware of her over-young print dress and pulled her coat around her quickly. The newsdealer said with vast thoughtfulness, "Now, I don't know for sure, mind you, but there might have been someone like your gentleman friend coming by this morning." "About 10? "About 10, the newsdealer agreed. "Tall fellow, blue suit. I wouldn't be at all surprised." "Which way did he go?" she said eagerly. "Uptown?" "Uptown," the newsdealer said, nodding. "He went uptown. That's just exactly it. What can I do for you, sir?" She stepped back, holding her coat around her. The man who had been standing behind her looked at her over his shoulder, and then he and the newsdealer looked at one another. She wondered for a minute whether or not to tip the newsdealer, But when both men began to laugh, she moved hurriedly on across the street. Uptown, she thought. That's right. And she started up the avenue, thinking, he wouldn't have to cross the avenue, just go up 6 blocks and turn down my street, so long as he started uptown. About a block farther on, she passed a florist shop. There was a wedding display in the window, and she thought, this is my wedding day after all. He might have gotten flowers to bring me. And she went inside. The florist came out of the back of the shop, smiling and sleek.